Alright, today we're going to be talking about graphic design a little bit and Photoshop, and before we get into that, I just want to talk real quick about album covers. And in hip-hop and honestly any genre, you really don't need to do that much when it comes to an album cover. I mean, if you look at this photo, all you really have is a picture, you have some text on the side, a black box, and that's about it. You know, looking at another album cover, again, you just have a photo, some text on top of it, again, photo, text on top of it. These are all very, very simple to do. This one I'm not a fan of because, you know, the photo is pretty low quality and the text is kind of the same color as the background, and I'm not a big fan of the way that they put it together, but just to illustrate the point that the album covers are really not that complicated. And I think a lot of the time when people are trying to do their own graphic design, the most common mistake is that people try to do too much and they try to be over the top. A lot of the time I'll see people try to do something like this where, you know, you have a lot going on. You got all these different photos. There's no real, you know, logic to why is his face, you know, coming out of the clouds. This text does not seem to fit in at all with this text up here. Then you have a completely different font and a completely different color right here. There is so much going on that this does not look good. Yet it is a professional album cover. Professional in the sense of somebody who got paid to do it. But when you really break it down and look at it, you know, you got all these girls in the background and this weird library looking thing. He's in the middle. You got his face coming out of the clouds. It doesn't make any sense. And it is not a good album cover. It is not a good composition. You are much better off doing something like this where you have a high quality photo and, you know, you have a very minimal aspect of graphic design. You know, you got this black box on the left side. They threw some text on there. You got the logo. And notice that all of the colors in this composition are well done. You know, you just have black and white, black and white, black and white. Even the clothing that they're wearing, black and white. There is a sense of uniformity. There's a sense of everything coming together and belonging together. There's no weird face coming out of the skies and random girls in the background and 8 different types of fonts that don't seem to fit well together. So a point that I'm trying to make is that if you're doing graphic design, especially for an album cover, definitely keep it more on the simple side. Once you get better at graphic design, then you could try to do more complex things, but you have to know when to use them, how to use them, and where they fit in. You know, just for example, this text at the top, you know, it's a cool looking, you know, diamond effect, but it really has a time and a place where it looks like it belongs, and this really is not it. But more often than not, you're going to want your album to be very simple. A photo, some text on top of it, a photo, some text on top of it, a photo, some text on top of it, and a photo, some text on top of it. Now, whenever you do any type of graphic design, whether that be an album cover or a poster or some kind of promotional ad on Facebook or whatever, the very first thing you want to do is figure out what the size needs to be. And honestly, you should just resort to Google for that. I typed in album cover dimensions and pretty much the first thing I see, we have 3000 by 3000 pixels at 300 DPI. So real quick, let me just explain what a pixel is in case you don't know. If I go up here to File, New, Start up a new project, what I can do is I can make this 2 pixels by 1 pixel. What that means is it'll be 2 pixels wide, 1 pixel high. Click OK. Now let me grab my magnifying tool. I'm going to blow this up and zoom all the way in. And right now, this is all I've got. So real quick, I'm clicking on the pencil tool and I'm setting this to 1 pixel. So essentially, I'm going to be able to fill in 1 pixel. I'm also going to change the color here from blue to black. OK. And what I'll do is I'll just left click right here. And what that did was fill it in. And that's all you have right there, 1 pixels. So this is a total of 2 pixels. You have the black pixel on the right and the white pixel on the left. And like I said before, it is 2 pixels wide, 1 pixel high. So essentially, you can think of a pixel as nothing more than a little box, and you can fill it, you know, with some kind of color, whether that be, you know, red, blue, green, black, white, whatever. So when we talk about DPI and PPI, which there is a difference, but we're not going to get into that, it's basically the same thing. I'm assuming the creators of this website are not from America, but 2.54 centimeters is 1 inch. They are the exact same distance. So when they say that they have 10 PPI, what that means is that for every 1 inch, you have 10 pixels going across horizontally, and then you also have another 10 pixels going across vertically. Conversely, if you have 20 DPI, that means that you have a 20 by 20 grid in the span of 1 inch. So hopefully what you can see from this image is that the more pixels you have, the more clear your quality, your photo is going to look. So a lower DPI generally means that you have a lower quality photo. So basically that's what it means when they say you should have 3000 by 3000 pixels at 300 DPI. Basically they're saying that you should have a 10 by 10 inch image. Now when you actually print it out, it's not going to be 10 by 10 inches. However, they will probably shrink it down, but because you create it on, you know, this very big canvas, the quality will be better because you're compressing all the pixels into a smaller area. Now, I don't know if anybody actually still makes physical CD covers anymore, but if you do, you know, you're going to want to look up the actual dimensions online. This is one, for example. This one says that the dimensions are 4.724 by 4.724. So you could take a project that is 10 by 10 and shrink it down to 5 by 5 without, hurting the quality at all. All that really matters is that when you're creating your project, you have a perfect square. Now, that being said, what you might want to do is add a little bit of bleed. Now, basically what that means is that when you print out your album cover, it's going to look a little bit like this, where you have a white paper in the background, and then you have your actual photo of your album cover in the middle. Now, the actual proportions here are not exactly the same, but hopefully you get the idea. And if you were to, take a pair of scissors and cut, all around the edges here, it is inevitable that you're going to get some of this white little background going around the edge. So, after you cut it out, it might look something like this, where you can still see some of that white background. And you really don't want that. So what you can do is try to account for that by making a bigger album cover. And then around the edges, what you can do is when you cut it out, you'll be missing some of what you originally had, but you'll notice that there's no white background around the edges. So if you create and design your album cover properly, you won't be losing any information when you cut it down. So especially when you're printing something out, it's better to create an album cover that is a little bit bigger than what you actually want to create. Just make sure that you still want it to be a square. That way, when you print it out and you cut around the outside, you're not going to be stuck with that extra white border. Now, that being said, 3000 by 3000 at 300 DPI, that is actually a pretty big file. So let me go ahead and click File, New. I'm going to start a new project. Here we're going to do 3000 by 3000. And we're going to do resolution 300 pixels per inch. So I found a graphic online. Let me go ahead and paste it in. Let me go ahead and magnify, and I'm going to magnify to 100%. And I want you to appreciate, just how big this photo actually is. And that goes to show you how big 3000 by 3000 at 300 DPI really is. It is a very, very large canvas. This photo is honestly big enough to be my wallpaper. Yet when I look at my actual album cover, you can see I have all this extra space here. And I definitely don't want to make an album cover where I have my artist like this and most of the background is, pretty much empty. So if you actually look at this photo of Drake, in the grand scheme of things, he is really not very big compared to this background. And I really don't want that if I'm going to create an album cover. So what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and right click and delete this layer. And for the record, if you don't see this little box here, go to Window and then go to Layers. This is a very important box, probably the one I use more than any other. And it basically just shows you all the layers that you have going on in your image at any one given time. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But real quick, what I want to do is I want to create a file. I want to make a new file. Whenever I copy an image, it automatically detects the actual size of the image. So fortunately, all I have to do is click OK. And then when I paste the image, you can see that the image, is already the same size as the canvas. Now what I can do is I can go up here to Image and I can change the size of the image. And what I can do is I can change my resolution and make it 100 DPI. And then I'm going to click OK. And let me wait one moment while it, processes everything. And basically all that did was kind of blow up the image a little bit. So if I zoom out, I can press Control A and that will select everything on the canvas. As you can see, they got this line going around. So basically it is selecting the entire canvas. And what I can do is Control C to copy, and it'll copy this image. And then let me go back to my original canvas. This is the one that is 3000 by 3000 and 300 DPI. And now if I Control and V paste, you can see that the image of Drake is a lot bigger. And you can see that this is probably a much more reasonable size if I'm creating an album cover for my artist to be. I might even make it just a little bit smaller, but this is fine for what I'm teaching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over a little bit. So if you look here in the layer panel, you can see that there's a background and it's all white. So if I left click on layer 1, which is the layer that has Drake on it, and if I left click on the image and then move it, you can see that that background image that is all white is still there. I haven't done anything with it. All I've really done is paste another image on top of it. And that's really the way that Photoshop works, is that every single image that you create, or if I were to add in some text, let me go ahead and do that real quick. I can go here to where it says T, this is the text object, and then I can left click here in the middle, and that will allow me to write in whatever I want to. So I'll just type in Drake. I can click on this drop down box and it'll let me pick any single font that I want to. As you can see, there's all kinds of fonts, but I'm good with what I have right now. So I'll go ahead and keep this font. But notice now on the layer panel, we have 3 different layers now. We have the background layer, which is all white. We have the photo of Drake, and then we have the text. We have the photo of Drake on the second layer. Then on the third layer, we have the text where it just says the word Drake. So if I wanted to move this and put this under here, I could do that. I could put the Drake layer beneath the photo. However, as you can see, the text is no longer visible because it's being covered up by this photo of Drake. So let me go ahead and move that back. And what I can do is I can add in some more text. And real quick, I'm going to go ahead and select the whole thing. I'm going to make it a smaller font size, like 48. 28, maybe go a little smaller than that, maybe 30, maybe a little smaller than that, even 24. And I can go ahead and put, you know, the new text right underneath that one. Now that doesn't look amazing. What I can do is I can, again, select this same text. And if I click on this little folder up here, that will either hide or show this little box to the right. So here where it says VA, I can, you know, change the value here and I can make it something like 200. And all that did was add in a bunch of space in between all of the letters. So I can even make this a little bit smaller. Let me go down and go to 18. And then, you know, I can add in even more space. And that's a really easy way to make, you know, a somewhat decent looking composition. You can move it and try to align it, you know, perfectly. But that really is, you know, kind of like all you need to know to make a really, really simple album cover.